Dear participants, good evening. Thank you very much for participating in the session today. COP is a great opportunity to get together and discuss an eminent pressing challenge of climate change. And the session today, we will focus on addressing the role of innovation diplomacy in stepping up climate action. The session will discuss how we can share ideas, and not only share ideas, but support those who think outside the box globally, and the role of different stakeholders. We have a very rich panel today, and a keynote speaker from our director, Ms. Cristina Russo, Director of International Cooperation and Global Approach at DG Research and Innovation at the European Commission. I will give the floor to her shortly. To kick off the discussion, we launched a poll to get your views about the different forms of innovation diplomacy and which of them is most effective to fight climate change. So you have 10 minutes to share your thoughts, either on the screen, if you're participating online, or if you're participating here with us, you can scan the QR code and start sharing your thoughts with us. Without further ado, I give the floor to Ms. Maria Cristina Russo to give an overview of international European research and innovation activities related to climate change, the current EU engagements to tackle climate change worldwide. Ms. Cristina, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Eva, good afternoon to everybody from Brussels. It's a shame that I'm not there with you in Sharm-el-Sheikh, but I'm very well represented, not only by Eba, our science counselor in Egypt and for the South Med, but also by Jan-Marco Müller, who joined you physically. The only thing I can say is that here in Brussels it's very sunny this afternoon, and so it's kind of also being there weather-wise, looking at the weather too. I'm very happy to introduce this discussion, which I hope will be as lively as possible, and I have no doubt about it. And what I would like to say is that, it's why did we choose this theme? Why did we choose the theme on innovation diplomacy? I think that we cannot but underline the role of innovation in the changing world. We are using techniques, for example, the fact that now I'm connecting to from Brussels virtually. This is, of course, something that is linked to the innovation. We could not have done it in the past. We would not even have dreamed to participate in meetings without being there physically. Many of the apps that we have on the smartphones were not around for a long time. Innovation has completely changed the way that we work, the way that we live. And I think you can join me in saying that with the COVID crisis, in different ways and in different forms, we have done even a bigger, we have had also a bigger role, we made bigger use of innovation. In fact, this is very important as far as we are concerned. We are DG, the Directorate General Research and Innovation of the European Commission, and we develop the research and innovation policy of the European Union, which is carried out together with the member states of the European Union in what we call a Team Europe approach, so all together creating synergies and maximizing impact. Now, what is very important to say also is that in terms of international cooperation, we have been working a lot on all what relates to research cooperation. We have several cooperation agreements, science and technology cooperation agreements with key partners countries. To name one, for example, with Egypt, since many years. We have had the European Union framework programs for research and innovation completely open to the participation of research entities from countries outside Europe. But in terms of international engagement, it's only recently that we have stepped up innovation as one of the pillars of our activity. And when and how did we do that? First of all, we had launched several projects that looked at pilot projects that were useful in order to connect the ecosystems, the innovation ecosystems of the European Union with the one of countries outside Europe. We had some projects in Egypt, for example, which were also financed in synergy with our colleagues from the Directorate General of the European Commission on Enlargement. And then also we have started a pilot action with Africa. We started a pilot action with the African Union back in 2019, which is now seeing the light with a very ambitious project, which is the development of the European Union, African Union Innovation Agenda, on which we are working now, and which should be adopted by the European Union and African Union leaders at the forthcoming summit at the beginning of next year. But so far I spoke about projects, but now I want to speak about policy, and I want to focus on the global approach to research and innovation, which is the international cooperation strategy in the field of research and innovation, which has been adopted by the European Commission in May 2021, and which has been endorsed by the Council of Ministers with 2 sets of conclusions, and also by the European Parliament with the resolution. And in fact, with this strategy, with this new strategy for international cooperation, we really put innovation as one of the key pillars of our action. And to be schematic here and to frame this discussion, if we turn to the global approach, what do we say? We say that with our international cooperation, we want to promote those values and principles which underpin research and innovation cooperation. We want to use research and innovation in order to promote at international level the development, the reaching of the objectives of the EU strategic priorities, amongst which the green transition is one, is a very, very important one. So our research and innovation cooperation at the service of the green transition, at the service of other key priorities, such as digital transition and health, of course, very much linked to the pandemic. And also we want to use innovation as a cross-cutting element in order to promote those objectives. And there, I think that with the specific focus also that we give in the global approach communication to the key partner countries and regions, I can say very, very clearly that the South Mediterranean region, it's a key priority for us. And with the policy framework of the global approach, with the policy framework of the development of the Green Deal, also from a research and innovation international point of view, the use of innovation, we have been focusing very much on having tailor-made initiatives which were designed, implemented for the Southern Mediterranean. One of our flagship is the PRIMA program, about which you will speak later, which in fact saw the light before the global approach strategy was adopted, but which was also instrumental for us in order to get the thinking of refocusing our international approach on promoting those international initiatives that gather together different member states for reaching, putting together their agenda, their means, in order to promote the key objectives of the European Union. And I spoke about member states and international partners. I don't want to be long because this is supposed to be a short intervention which should frame the discussion. But for us, I mean, it's really very important to listen from all of you how we can further work to promote innovation diplomacy, taking into account of the fact that innovation has taken a continuously growing importance in the relations with the third countries, and that it is really one of the key pillars of our policy engagements with the third countries in terms of research and innovation policy. And I will be very happy to listen to your interventions and, of course, to engage with all of you in the debate that we will have. Thank you very much, Heba. I will pass you back the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Russo. Thank you very much for this very comprehensive overview of the EU global approach to research and innovation, particularly focusing on climate change. I now give the floor to my colleague Gianmarco, who will coordinate this panel.
Slido.
Yes, and the results of the Slido, we had 50% of the participants voting for sharing technologies, and the other 50% voting for institutional motivation of multilateral governments. So I leave you also to comment on that outcome of the poll. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Heba, and welcome to this panel discussion. And we want to discuss role of innovation diplomacy in addressing climate change. And we see here already quite an interesting result, pointing to sharing of technologies and of institutional innovation as two of the main factors we should push in innovation diplomacy. This we want to discuss with a stellar panel, which actually has representatives from policy, from business, from academia, and also from civil society. And I want to briefly introduce the speakers. We are going to have online with us Álvaro Albacete. Ambassador Albacete is the Deputy Secretary General of the Union for the Mediterranean, and he has had a long-standing career in Spanish diplomacy. Then we have next to me here physically on the panel, Melania Guerra. Melania comes from Costa Rica. She started as a mechanical engineer, working also at NASA, did her PhD in oceanography, then worked on the two polar zones in the Arctic and the Antarctic, which isn't a very frequent activity for people from Costa Rica, I have to say. And then recently she joined Planet, which is a company that provides cutting-edge remote sensing imagery. So she's speaks to kind of switch the fence from academia to business, and she certainly will share her views with us. Then we have on her side Ahmed El Shazli, and Ahmed is the director of the Office of Sponsored Research of Heliopolis University. He also worked a long time as a university professor at Alexandria University. And he's also engaging in the SICEM initiative, which is an Egyptian initiative promoting sustainable development. And then, last not least, we have Claude Sodequin with us. And Claude is the founder of Ecolotrip, which is actually an NGO that promotes the engagement of young Francophone people, especially also from Africa, in climate change matters. And he also is very much engaged with the African Union, European Union Youth Cooperation Hub. So really an interesting panel bringing together very diverse perspectives, and we want to go right into the topic. And our first question, the first question I would like to ask Ambassador Albacete, who is connected online with us. So he's obviously looking at innovation diplomacy from the diplomacy side of the fence, if I may say so. And obviously, as the Deputy Secretary General of the Union for the Mediterranean, very much engaged in what innovation diplomacy can do, and what we would like to hear from him, what is the importance the Union for the Mediterranean gives to innovation diplomacy, and how would you see this from the view of a multilateral organization? Please, Ambassador Albacete.
Thanks a lot, Gianmarco, for this relevant question. And please allow me to start by thanking the DG Research and Innovation of the European Commission, and especially Director Russo, our North co-chair for the Union for the Mediterranean Platform on Research and Innovation, for the kind invitation and for the leading role played by the European Union on research and innovation in the Mediterranean area. I would say that the Union for the Mediterranean is in an ideal position for promoting innovation diplomacy as a multilateral space for dialogue and action, where our 42 member states meet and work together on concrete fields such as research and climate. First of all, let us examine the role of our regional platforms. I can, of course, make the example of the Union for the Mediterranean platform for research and innovation, but the same applies, for instance, to our platforms on environment and climate change or on energy. These are thematic spaces for our member states under the leadership of the European Union and Jordan to agree on joint actions based on our shared challenges. Often, innovation is one of the enablers for tackling them. We can use the example of climate action, where the experts working on a specific research and innovation roadmaps have identified a concrete set of priorities and activities where they highlighted the need to promote technology cooperation, setting up transversal projects on fields such as water scarcity, greenhouse gases, agriculture, or marine ecosystems. Then there are projects labeled by the Union for the Mediterranean, which often try to use, and I would say without being aware of it, innovation diplomacy to promote new solutions to our sustainability challenges. For instance, on water scarcity, where the Union for the Mediterranean has labeled a project for a Gaza desalination plant, or the CEAM Med Forum, which is under a UFM labeled project, where PhD students of the Mediterranean are going to meet in Chania next month for discussing their research activities on agriculture and other relevant fields. I would like also to mention why we need innovation, and more precisely, green innovation. The Euro-Mediterranean region is currently experiencing a double challenge. A sustainability challenge in terms of the impact of climate change and environmental degradation, and an employability challenge, especially if we consider that currently the south of the Mediterranean is experiencing demographically a sort of youth bulge, with 60% of our population in some areas under 30 years old, being trained and needing soon to find jobs. Green innovation on this regard can be a positive force in creating solutions for tackling climate-related issues on one side, and on the other side, in generating sustainable economic growth and job creation. This is an angle where regional cooperation has an added value in terms of technology co-creation and the pooling of resources needed for research and development. As Union for the Mediterranean, we have been promoting green innovation and innovation diplomacy by supporting regional dialogue on this regard, promoting topics such as a closer engagement between academia, with business sector, governments, and civil society in a way that is conscious of the environmental externalities. We call it the quintuple helix, as it builds on the triple helix model of innovation. We have a publication detailing some of the many Mediterranean best practices. We call it a handbook for academia, business, and government on our website. But we also just concluded a forum on green innovation and employability in Amman, co-organized with the Higher Council for Science and Technology of Jordan, our co-chair for research. We are now launching some pilot country assessments on the innovation pipelines in order to go more in depth into this issue, responding to needs highlighted during our trainings and forums. In short, I believe that innovation diplomacy is one of the best ways to promote the creation of synergies between the North, the South, and the East of the Mediterranean, and also the South-South cooperation. And it allows for a more fluid and action-based dialogue in our region with a positive multi-stakeholder approach. Thank you, Jean-Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Albacete, for this intervention, which you mentioned very important points, including, of course, that innovation diplomacy is not just helping us to tackle the complex challenges we have at hand with climate change, but also, of course, in creating jobs and in creating a green economy, which in a way brings me also to our next speaker, Melania Guerra. So, while you, as I mentioned earlier, you worked in doing research on oceans and also on the polar zones. So in a way, you are kind of science diplomat by nature because you're working in what we call the global commons. And you recently joined a private company as a director for science strategy. So perhaps if you can share a little bit point of view now from the business point of view, what's the role for innovation diplomacy?
Thank you, Gianmarco, and thank you for the invitation for this panel. It's wonderful to listen to the insights from everyone here. Have you ever heard about that test that biologists apply to animals to know which species or determine which species are smart and intelligent and which ones are not? It is that famous mirror test in which they put a mirror in front of an individual, and if they can recognize themselves, then they are deemed to be an intelligent species. And I believe in the late 70s, humanity kind of faced that moment of becoming smart. It was the first time in the late 70s or late 60s, early 70s when the Apollo missions brought back pictures of the Earth as a single organism, as a single being. And for the first time, humanity saw itself as being this smart animal that could recognize in that image that that was us and that we were different from everything else that we had taken pictures of before. So at Planet, we have improved, we have increased the capacity to see ourselves in higher resolution so we can detect better spatial patterns, in higher temporal scales so that we can detect the temporal cycles that nature has, and also to be able to see parts of our being that we normally don't pay attention to. So with a fleet of 240 satellites that are in orbit right now and have been taking images for about 10 years, we have this capacity now to understand the change that we are creating on the surface of the Earth and start tracking that change, start giving transparency and try to give accountability to both the positive efforts and the positive actions, as well as bring to accountability the ones that are not. As the Director of Science Strategy at Planet, it is my job to evangelize about this capacity that we have. And I have to go to universities and talk to scientists that are my colleagues that I identify with that just want to produce better knowledge and enable them with our data. We have a program by which we provide data to students and faculty and staff at universities and research centers with free data so that they can produce up to now about 2,000 or 2,500 papers with Planet data that span areas of land use to forestry to blue carbon. We have many uses also in different areas of the world. So that division that we were talking about how we don't want to replicate the patterns of the global north just being the ones that produce science, but also enabling and providing capacity in areas of the world like my small country that has so much capacity and so much talent. So at Planet, we are a company, but we are, as of December of 2021, we became a public benefit corporation. And that is one of the ways in which business can support innovation diplomacy, because we are not just providing our revenue reports at the end of the year to the shareholders. The mission and the values of the company are embedded into the bylaws, and we have to also produce impact. So scientific publications, knowledge, public goods, all of these things are things that are valued just as much as how much benefit the revenue is providing. And that is one of the ways that Planet is interacting with the decision-making world. But also not just at the level of research, like they were speaking before, but also in the innovation ecosystem. We are launching a program of engaging with the startup ecosystem in the United States, and we are hoping that if it works, we're going to replicate it in other parts of the world. But then this also depends, of course, on putting in place diplomats and decision makers and policy makers that are smart enough to recognize the talent that that research and that innovation is creating. And I think going back to my first analogy of the beginning, maybe the real test of a smart species should be if you have a tool like a mirror and you get to see yourself and you get to see that something is hurting yourself, that you stop doing it. So like a tool, like any tool, it is not a good tool or a bad tool. Geospatial is also not neutral. We have to make sure that we use it in a way to produce public goods, to produce knowledge, but then apply that knowledge to make better decisions and stop infringing on ourselves something that hurts us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Melania Guerra, especially for pointing out also the societal responsibility of the private sector and of working with academia, providing, as you say, even data for free to enhance really the generation of knowledge, which brings me then to our next speaker, Professor Ahmed El-Shazli. Well, you have worked for many, many years in academia, including in a lot of EU-funded projects. So, but at the same time, you're also engaging in the SICM initiative on kind of bringing about change in terms of sustainable development. So what is the role of universities when it comes to innovation diplomacy?
Thank you, Gianmarco, for the invitation and for the introduction. And by the way, now you have two panelists from the oceanography, from the heart of the ocean. So the answers will come from the bottom of the sea. So actually, the university, in my point of view, it is the core. It is the source of innovation. And let's go back to the main traditional roles, three roles of the universities, which are the education, scientific research, and community service. You can implement and you can do the role in a traditional way or in an innovative way. For the education, it's all about the unfolding the potential. You will not have the innovation without unfolding the potential of the students, of the staff, of all the people that are affiliated to the university. They building their capacities, providing them with the skills, knowledge, and the capacities and competences that will allow them to innovate. And as well, the integration, since we are speaking about the climate change, in the integration of the climate change education in the university. Moving to the second pillar or the second main role, which is the scientific research, applied research, research that is focused on the solutions, research that can be implemented and applied on the ground, not only in the scientific papers, the scientific journals, but also on the ground, touching the people. And this will take me to the third role of the universities, which is the community service. Community service link the academia to the community by increasing or raising their awareness, by giving them the technical support for their innovative ideas. So now I will move to the second part, which is SICM. Now I'm still in the academia, but in Heliopolis University for Sustainable Development, which is the educational component of SICM initiative that started 45 years ago, promoting the holistic approach for sustainable development that is touching the four main areas of sustainable development or four main areas of life, which are the economy, the ecology, the culture, and the social part. So in Heliopolis University for Sustainable Development, we are doing the same three roles, but in a different way. We have SICM vision goals, which are 16 vision goals that are consistent and coherent with the Sustainable Development goals of the United Nations. And to implement these goals and to help in the implementation of the Sustainable Development goals of the United Nations, we have created 7 centers. The 7 centers, they are doing the three cross-cutting roles, which are education, research, and community service. For instance, I have mentioned the unfolding the potential and lifelong learning of the people. So we have the Center for Education for Sustainable Development. In the research, we have around 32 funded projects from different funding bodies, including the European Union in different programs like PRIMA, Erasmus Plus, and Horizon 2020, ENI, CBC Med, and more. Those are all projects. They are supporting the research and the innovation, and they are helping the people in order to unfolding their potential and in order to have something on the ground. For instance, we have a center for carbon footprint center. Carbon Footprint Center, which is more or less the most important one of our centers now, which are, as we are in the COP. These give research, these give a technical support for the companies in order to develop their carbon footprint assessment, in order to have a sustainability report for them and more. And finally, for the community service, we have many centers, including the Integrative Health Center and Rural Development Center, and as well the Center for the Entrepreneurship for Social Impact, where we have collecting all the startups and helping the students and the people from outside the university in all process steps of the ideas, starting from the ideation, incubation, access to finance, and even until the registration to be a small size company. So I think in this way, the university could be an important tool for the implementation or for innovation diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor El-Shazly, and thank you much especially for pointing out this responsibility of universities, not just to do education and research, but also to engage with the community and with society at large. This brings me to our next speaker, Claude Sodequin, who really works at this community interface, especially with young people, and using young people to engage on climate matters. What's the role of civil society and especially of the young generation in engaging in innovation diplomacy?
Thank you very much, John, for the introduction, and I'm really excited to be part of the such distinguished speakers. And since today is the Youth Day at COP, I'm really happy to bring the youth perspective on the discussion. So back to the question, I just want to share an experience of the AU Youth Cooperation Hub. It was a follow-up program of the European Union after the Abidjan summit of the head of states. So it was the first time when young people from Africa, Europe, and diaspora came together to find solution to our common problem. So this is an example, concrete example of how youth, especially, are actually working together to share knowledge and then have a concrete solution tackling climate change. So to take my example, I'm part of the climate change cluster, where we work on an innovative agroforestry project in Burkina Faso and Niger. And this project includes, for instance, payment for ecosystem services. So it's a kind of sharing of technology because we have companies, a consortium of companies coming from the Europe, but also from Africa. And we have other technology sharing such as satellite mapping, drone. And I think this is a concrete example how young people could come together and work in developing research and innovation toward tackling climate change. So one point that I want also to raise is at Ecolotrip, the youth-led organization that I led, I just realized 5 years ago that in this kind of space, there are quite few young people from Francophone countries. And one of the barriers, alongside the global barrier that youth from the Global South face, is the barrier of the language. So I think this is how we at Ecolotrip, we're trying also to engage with youth from Francophonie to take initiative and then to be present in this kind of space of climate change. And I'm proud to say that today I'm leading a delegation of 15 young people coming here and to get to know how the climate policy making process work at international level. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Claude Sodequin. Really an important work you do because it's really about the formation of the future decision makers when it comes to climate change matters. And now I would like to bring in again Maria Cristina Russo in Brussels, the Director for the Global Approach to Research and Innovation in DG Research and Innovation of the European Commission. So, Maria Cristina, you have heard now kind of views from these different sectors, from business, from academia, from civil society, from diplomacy. What I would like to know a little bit from your side is, what is the role of the European Commission in here? What can we do to foster such initiatives and push innovation diplomacy forward?
Thank you very much, Gianmarco, and thank you very much to all of you who spoke and brought together from a different perspective your experience, your feelings, and the way you've been working. Thanks also to the last speaker for underlining the importance of youth. Youth, it's a huge dimension in the work that is done on innovation. And I think it was very nice to see a shortcut of different sectors of our society. Gianmarco, what can we bring in terms of European Union? First of all, as I mentioned earlier on, we have developed a policy that gives the coherence of these actions. We do not only have a policy, we have an instrument. I mentioned earlier on the European Union research framework program. We have now the program which is called the the Horizon Europe program, which is a huge program. It's a program of 95 billion euros with a 7 years duration, which touches upon the different sectors of science and innovation. And let me be clear, it is the biggest research and innovation multilateral program of the world. We are very proud for that in the European Union, and we are very happy, especially ourselves in terms of the ones that have to implement the international cooperation policy, that this program is completely open to the participation of researchers, innovators, research and innovation organizations from all over the world. There are different components in the Horizon Europe program. Some have been mentioned earlier on: the Horizon mission, the European Innovation Council, the European Institute for Innovation, and also all the activities that are launched and implemented in order to tackle these global societal challenges that we are confronted with, amongst which climate change is very important, and amongst which what is support to the green transition is of huge importance. Now, what I would like to say is that all the instruments that are mobilized within Horizon Europe, they do have and they require an international component. We need to have an international cooperation for two reasons. First of all, because we cannot tackle those global societal challenges, such as the climate change, if we work in silos. And also because I think it's really very important what we can do. And there I come to the concept of diplomacy, what we can do through cooperation in science and innovation in order to really building some ties, some concrete, I always like to say, to use the expression building blocks, to create building blocks that give some concrete elements to the strengthening of our international relations. And this is what we're doing through research cooperation, through innovation diplomacy. Innovation diplomacy is very important because it can help us to bridge the gap between those developing innovative solutions, whether these are technical, societal, or institutional solutions, and those that need to implement them at political level globally. It is really important that through innovation diplomacy, we create those links in order for those people that have to take decisions, those diplomats that have to work internationally, that they know what is being cooked up in the labs, they know and they trust also what is being done in the laboratories, and they can make the best use of these innovation developments to the benefits of the strengthening of the global international relations and to the end to the benefit of the society. Let me conclude by saying that here we are, because I'm virtually with you, at the conference of the parties to the UN Framework Convention in Climate Change, not the famous COP. We are at the 27th COP, and these are one of those occasions which are a bit bizarre, in fact, if you want to look it from a broader perspective, because we have different people that gather together, that try to present what they do, try to give and take on their action, on their perspective, and at the end of those big gatherings, there is a compromise in which at the end nobody is really happy. There is something which has been gained, something which has not been gained, and something that remains very, very, very flu. And I think that it's there also where the role of science and the role of innovation diplomacy comes in, because we can really help through innovation diplomacy in order to make those things that have been decided sometimes reflected in some compromises which are not to the complete satisfaction of the participants, but we can move forward with the innovation diplomacy in order to clarify those issues, in order to get together the policymakers and the scientists for advancing on those objectives that maybe in a way that not everybody is completely happy, but have been decided together, again, for the benefit of science, for the benefit of innovation, and for the benefit of the society as a whole. And I do believe that this is where the real power of innovation diplomacy lies.
Thank you very much, Maria Cristiana Russo. You mentioned a very important point and a very important dimension of innovation diplomacy, and that is to build trust between countries, between partners, between societal sectors, to come up with conjoint solutions. Now, obviously, it's not just us talking here, but we also would like to invite you here in the auditorium to ask questions. So if there are any questions from your side which you would like to ask our panelists, I would like to invite you, and we have our colleague with the microphone coming around. There's a question over here, I think. Is that a question? No? Please.
Thank you very much for having this event. I've been following the European diplomacy for quite some time, and I've seen that the European Commission has been developing several different innovative types of diplomacy. For example, diplomacy through the institutional cooperations, for example, the banks and also academic institutions. And beyond these types of very traditional diplomacies, incorporating this innovative diplomacy, what kind of outcome would you expect? And also, by having those types of diplomacy, for example, the cooperation in education, in technology, and also in finance, do you think that will make a fundamental change in climate actions? Thank you very much.
Okay. An important question around the role of innovators and how they can, push for new solutions. I don't know whether there's anybody here who would like to tackle the question. Also, of course, either Maria Cristiana Russo or Alvaro Albacete, who are online. I would perhaps also broaden this question also a little bit more into, the issue. Of course, when you talk about innovation, there's always this notion of this tension between competition and cooperation. Because, of course, when you want to be innovative and have a new idea and want to push it, then, of course, you're in a competition with others. And that's, of course, when also the diplomacy aspect comes in. But at the same time, obviously, we all know that we need to cooperate across the planet to solve these major issues like climate change. So I don't know who would like to take the question. Any volunteers? I don't know, Christina?
Yes, I didn't want to be the only one speaking.
Sure. Please, go ahead.
So, I was leaving the floor for the to the others a bit. No, I mean this is a very important point what you are making. Also, this I mean the question finding the right balance between competition and cooperation, no, which is something that that is very important. But I mean. And also linked to the question that was made, I think that I would maybe reply with something simple, which could seem obvious, but there is so much to do and so much to gain to be done together that I think that cooperation always wins on competition. And we have seen it very clearly also when we have developed this, when we in developing this European Union, African Union innovation agenda, that that the need for working together and the gains are so big that that cooperation prevails, and it is certainly possible and feasible to build up a way of cooperating which leaves aside those sectors which are more sensible and for which maybe it is better for different reasons on which I will not elaborate now, to not pull together expertise and knowledge.
Yes, and I perhaps would add also to your question on the innovators. Of course, I think what we have heard from all our panelists is this societal responsibility of innovators, be they in business or in academia, to engage with society and come up with solutions. Melania. Yes.
Yeah, and I would say to your question also, as you pointed out, the European Union is very visionary and progressive in thinking about a more coherent and more interdisciplinary way of doing diplomacy as opposed to the traditional way that we knew diplomacy before, right? It's thinking about culture, it's thinking about society, it's thinking about economy, all of those things that are embedded in the way that you should pursue your interest to defend your national and your regional interests. So I think in science, we're also starting to see those barriers and those silos breaking down. And universities are an example of a place where sometimes it's difficult to do that. But pursuing interdisciplinary science is the one that allows you to answer the questions that the decision makers really have to tackle in order to do this kind of innovative type of diplomacy. And in that sense, the research that we see coming out with geospatial information is in many ways and generally led by the physical and the natural sciences. But we really should, and I am fostering and I am trying to get the social sciences, the humanities, and the arts involved in utilizing geospatial also, and trying to use that information from our surface, our planetary surface, to answer questions about urban development or economics and markets and where are markets popping up, how much transaction is going on in those markets, because we can see those from space. So tackling those social and economic questions with the type of data sets that exist now, and fusing that with other data sets that exist, right? Like geospatial is not the only one, but fusing that together with all the many sensors that are now deployed in the world that give you information in a real-time basis really would help to produce the questions that those diplomats of the future are going to need.
You wanted to comment?
I just want to thank you for your answer, and just want to add, if I may say that the research, the scientific research, should have and should highlight the socio-economic impacts of any point. To have old research, the old research school that about the abstract research, the basic research, without showing the importance for the community, without showing the socio-economic impact on the community, I think it is not the research we want now, and it is not the research that will lead to the innovation. We from the academia, we are always accused that we are doing research that has no impact, and sometimes it is right, because there is no impact on the ground. There is no awareness. We don't focus on the awareness of the people, of the community, about what we are doing, and I think it's our fault and our mistake, and we have to solve this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I would perhaps here also add, of course, social science is also very important in the context of studying behavior of people and understanding behavior of people, because at the end of the day, what we need is a change of behavior. And I don't know whether, Claude, whether you want to comment a little bit on how can we work with young generation actually to change behavior in society?
If I may, I think from the youth perspective, especially from the global south, to change the behavior, I can just take the example of sensitizing young people on climate change. In Africa, for instance, we have sort of like other challenges that we think that are more important than climate change. And then when you come up with an initiative to sensitize young people, you need to look at the business perspective. For instance, if there is some plastic on the ground and then you say, oh, this is not good for the planet or something like that, they won't maybe listen to you. But then when you say that in this plastic you have the opportunity to turn that into maybe a green job, or transforming this plastic into something that you can sell, actually, that is something that work more than and this brings me to the point where you need to know the population, to know the culture of the population you are working with. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question. If there's... Oh, you want to comment?
If I can add
Okay.
one more thing, yes,
Sure.
about behaviors that you were speaking about. Earlier this week, I think we saw one of those behaviors that we should be changing, and it was the face of who is leading the COP, who are the heads of countries, who are the leaders that are making the decisions, and more incorporation of women and more incorporation of other faces that don't look like all of those men that were in that picture is one of the behaviors that would benefit science and would benefit decision making as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can all agree on this. Very important point. So, one more question, if there's one. If that's not the case, then okay. Then perhaps I come here to our concluding round, and I would have one question to all of our panelists, and I suggest we start with Ambassador Albacete. And the question is, if you would have one single idea of how could innovation diplomacy really help us in tackling climate change, which idea would that be? If you would
Thank you,
just
Gianmarco.
choose one. Yes, please.
Thank you, thank you. If you allow me, I'm going to take just 2 seconds to refer to the first question of the lady before, when she opposed cooperation versus competition. And I want to stress on one idea that has been highlighted by Director Cristina Russo when she spoke about trust. We are speaking here about science diplomacy, about innovation diplomacy, and the fact that we are introducing that concept of diplomacy in those initiatives is precisely because we want to build something based on trust. That is the effort of the platforms that we are trying to build in the Union for the Mediterranean, and that's behind all the initiatives that we are trying to implement. So the key word, and I don't want to be repetitive because I think that Director Russo said it very clearly before, is trust. And you are asking me about one single idea. If I had to choose one, I would focus on researches. Actually, what I think is that any coordinated effort on climate action must be keenly aware of the potential of Mediterranean scientists, PhDs, and researchers who can drive innovation and adaptation to the new global challenges. I really believe that we need to empower them, especially through the creation of regional centers or dedicated trainings where they will be able to meet each other and subsequently ask them to co-design a pilot innovation initiative on climate action with a bottom-up approach. Of course, in a way that is supporting the efforts of the Union for the Mediterranean research and innovation roadmaps on the topics included in the ministerial declaration. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. Very important and very good suggestion to really have a very concrete kind of co-design project in innovation diplomacy. Melania Guerra.
Is my microphone on? Yeah. I will dig my heels, I think, in my last answer and just expand and say that encouraging the education of girls and the scientific training of women, including training in science diplomacy for women, would lead to changing the faces of those heads of state, the faces of those leaders that are making the decisions in the diplomatic spheres, would change the questions and research that we would ask. It would change the answers, of course, that we would provide to those scientific questions that we have about the world. And then, I think it's been proven. There's studies of how a higher proportion of women in parliaments changes the kinds of laws that get passed, changes how public policy is made. It provides more importance to things like health, like the environment. So definitely including and empowering women is a powerful idea and may be the solution to all the problems that we have.
Thank you. Yes, Professor El-Chazri.
If I would choose one single idea for how innovation diplomacy can foster climate action, and I will speak from the academic perspective or academic point of view, and I will say empowerment, but not empowerment of women. Of course, it's important. I mean the empowerment of youth. I believe that the youth and the young generations and the students that are now in the schools, in the universities, those are the keys for the future, for the implementation of any innovative solutions. So I would say changing the criteria or the assessment methods for the students in the universities. For instance, if they are studying a course on the climate change and you assess them by questions and answers, it would be better if they have innovative ideas, they have projects, models, something like this, and they are assessed according to these criteria. I think this could be an innovative solution for the innovation diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Claude Sodequin.
Yeah, on my side, I would say co-creation and financial support, because I think for a while, young generation have been part of the. Whenever there is a program or a project, young generation are part of the consultation, but never part of the implementation side. And I think the initiative of the EU Youth Cooperation Hub is a good step forward, but there is a need to actually bring young people together from Africa, from Europe, and from the world to work together to tackle the climate change with an innovative solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Also an important point. One idea from Maria Cristina Russo.
Thank you very much, Gianmarco. Since I think I'm the last to speak in this lively, productive and friendly discussion, I would like to come with a really innovative idea. I think that we should invest in coffee machines. I think that coffee machines are the place where most innovative ideas are born. These are the places where scientists, engineers from different disciplines and nations meet, they discuss, and suddenly, like that, over coffee or maybe a tea, they come out with a brilliant idea that can change the world. And trust me that from the experience I have, also bureaucrats and diplomats meet there at coffee places, and that's where many of the brilliant ideas that have made significant changes in the world have been born.
Thank you very much. So the world needs more coffee machines, and it was a really interesting discussion. And I would just like to pass the floor again to my colleague Heba Gawa. She's the Research and Innovation Counselor of the EU here in Egypt for the last word.
Thank you very much. It was indeed a very interesting discussion and impressive participation in this very interesting panel. I would like to thank our moderator, our esteemed speakers, both at the pavilion and online. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you, Director Russo. Thank you, our esteemed panelists, for this very interesting discussion. And we are just perfectly on time for finishing the session. So thank you again. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.